beach cleanup event. This video will cover site inspection and risk assessment, planning, approvals and disposal, Indigenous cultural sites, biosecurity risks, nesting seabirds, promoting your event, cleanup materials, safety briefing, big and dangerous items, and finally, how to wrap up your beach cleanup event.
So when you're planning to do a beach cleanup, it's important that you have a look at the site to make sure that you have things like toilets, running water and beach access, as well as running through a risk assessment so that you can identify any hazards that may be dangerous for your volunteers.
It is important you seek approval of your local council, traditional owners and rangers prior to your beach cleanup event. And be sure to plan in advance where and how you will dispose of your collected items.
Over time, we've noticed an increase of marine debris in our waterways and on our beaches. Just the damage it's doing to our country, not just physically but also spiritually. Within each traditional owner group country, we have many places of cultural significance and also places that are also national, environmentally significant as well. Traditional owners have knowledge of these different areas. Most of these areas probably not have been recorded and not known to the wider community. So when convening a beach cleanup or a similar activity on country, it's always good to contact and consult with traditional owners just to make sure they're not going to impact on culturally significant places. Find out who are the traditional owners of a particular area. You can always go to your local land council or local NRM group or council. Even how to engage traditional owners in that business. And everything will be done culturally appropriate and ethically.
So my role in the Department of Agriculture is mainly surveillance. Just like at an airport, security screening your bags to detect anything that they do not want to come into the country, we surveil the coastline to identify articles that could potentially be bringing in pests and diseases. We can't do this on our own, so we rely on help. The main items that we look out for that may wash up would be timber articles. So the big items would be parts of boats, canoes, rafts. We look for signs of borers, termites. They could possibly harbour insects that are not in Australia. If those termites were to get into our timber, it could potentially have an effect on not only our environment, our backyard, but also industry. Other items of concern for us would be food waste, and this could be from international vessels. For example, plant material. It could harbour pests or diseases that we do not have in Australia, and if they were to establish, they could also affect our environment and our industry. And animal products. If meat was to wash up on shore and if our native animals were to eat it, they could potentially spread something like foot and mouth disease. And then if that also got into our native populations or our domestic populations, they could also get into our industry populations. So in the first instance, if you found something, take a GPS, take a photo, and you can report it to us. You can either report it on the email or you could report it on our 1-800 number, and that's the secure report. Another thing that would be important to look out for would be mass bird mortalities. That would indicate to us that there may be a bird disease in the area. If you were to find anything like that, take a photo, take a GPS point and report it immediately. Potentially it could be an exotic bird disease like avian influenza.
you're doing a beach clean-up for rubbish, you can tell if birds are nesting in an area by their behaviour. Hooded plovers, red-capped plovers doing a distraction display, fairy terns and little terns probably dive bombing you. Oyster catchers will also run around with their heads up, making sort of beep beep noise, which tells you that there's something wrong. And if you see that sort of behaviour, it's just a matter of keeping your distance. You might not be able to see the nest. The nest could be a depression in the sand with a couple of eggs that are camouflaged with the sand. But if you keep 10, 15, 20 metres from those birds, they'll tell you where you should be keeping away from, so you skirt around them. Local councils often have a record of environmentally sensitive areas, so if you contact local councils, they can inform you of locations that you should be cautious around. It's not hard to share beaches with a small bit allocated to the birds.
Good ways to promote your cleanup event are participating in related events and expos, distributing flyers and posters at public places or shops, and via social media posts and event invitations. Here is a list of materials and equipment that you will need for your beach cleanup. Hat, sunglasses, sunscreen, litter grabber, gloves, mobile phone, first aid kit, bags, sharps container, knife, scales, data sheet, cyber tracker, ID manual, registration forms, tarps or ground sheets, drinking water, hand sanitizer or soap, and additional items that may be relevant to your cleanup site, such as mosquito repellent and rain jackets. Beach cleanup safety briefing. There are 4 main parts of the safety brief. You can add extra information that is relevant to your event, the participants attending, for example children, people with disabilities, and so forth, and your cleanup location. If you need more information, contact your local council, insurance company, or local authorities. Part 1. Welcome and site orientation. First of all, introduce your site coordinator so people know who's in charge and who to ask questions to. Ensure all volunteers have filled out the appropriate registration forms and confirm with volunteers of any pre-existing medical conditions, the location of volunteers' medication, or physical limitations that might impact their participation. Ensure volunteers under the age of 18 work under adult supervision, and in general, ensure that volunteers work in pairs or groups, but not alone. Let volunteers know how long the cleanup will run and where to meet at the finishing time. Point out the location of toilets, extra drinking water and sunscreen, first aid kits, hand washing facilities, and so on. Tell your volunteers how they will be recalled in the event of an emergency, where they should meet, and the location of emergency equipment. If vessels are being used for the cleanup, ensure the boat captain gives a specific safety briefing for the vessel and safety equipment. Make sure your volunteers understand we want people to have fun, but that safety is the first priority of the event. Check if anyone has any questions before the cleanup activities begin. Part 2. Local hazards. Ensure all volunteers are made aware of all local hazards and let them know what they need to do to stay safe for each one of them. You should have identified these hazards during your pre-event risk assessment. These hazards can include big surf, rogue waves, high tides, strong, deep running water, vehicles, boats, quad bikes, roadsides, snakes, spiders, crocodiles, wasps, ants, and so on, falling branches and coconuts, cliffs, rocks, or unstable ground. Make sure you include any other hazards that you have identified in your risk assessment and let people know how to stay safe for each hazard. Tell your volunteers to always be aware of their surroundings to ensure their own and their volunteers' safety. Hazardous items. During a cleanup event, it is possible to come across a hazardous or dangerous item. Make sure your volunteers know what to do if this happens. Dangerous or hazardous items that you may find during cleanups include silver canisters, asbestos, containers with chemicals or poisons, heavy items, syringes, or any other unknown items. Ensure you tell volunteers what to do for each one of these. Check with local authorities if you are unsure. Ensure you know who you will report anything dangerous to. Local authorities can advise on the best way to remove dangerous or large items. Remember, volunteer safety is the first priority. Having a roll of danger tape in your cleanup kit is helpful when marking out the location of a dangerous item. General safety guidelines. Volunteers should always wear fully closed shoes, wear gloves when handling rubbish or debris, have sun protection including hats, sunglasses and sunscreen, have clothing to protect from rain, wind and sun as appropriate, stay hydrated, remember to regularly drink water, take a break, eat a snack and work within your personal limits. Wash hands after the cleanup and before eating. Lift items by bending their knees and protecting their back from straining. Be aware of their surroundings, don't work alone and remember to have fun. Make sure the coordinator adds any additional local information or guidelines.
When you're doing a beach cleanup, you can come across some really large items that can be difficult to remove. Our volunteers have just come across this rope that's been tangled up underneath the sand and underneath these logs. It can be pretty hard work to get this out, so it's important that you're not pulling or hurting your back when you're removing it. We actually had a shovel here, so we were able to dig a lot of it out, but we're going to go back and get the car and use a winch, and that way we can pull it out without hurting anyone's back. So if you find anything hazardous, such as this syringe that we've just found here, it's really important that you just don't pick it up and start carrying it away or throw it into the bag with all the other rubbish, because it could poke through the bag and injure one of the volunteers. For syringes, we want to put them into a sharps container, and I don't actually have one on me, so I'm not going to go and pick it up and take it to the sharps container. I'm going to bring the sharps container to the syringe. So I don't lose this spot, I want to mark the area first, so when I come back with the sharps container, I know exactly where I'm coming to. And you can do this for anything that you consider dangerous. So chemicals, one of those silver canisters, poisons, military ordinances, anything like that. If you have some danger tape, you can also mark that around the area too, just to keep all the other volunteers away. Once I've got the sharps container, it's really important you bring it to where the syringe is. We're going to open it up and make sure we put it down on the ground nice and sturdy so it doesn't blow over. Make sure you've got your gloves on, and then you're going to pick the syringe up, not by the pointy end, by the other end, and you're going to place it inside the sharps container. Once it's nice and secure, you're then going to put the lid on top, and that way this isn't going to poke through the bottle. If you found syringes during your beach cleanup, it's important that these containers are also disposed of correctly. You can take them to your local hospital or doctor's surgery, and they know how to dispose of them correctly, but don't throw them in with the rest of your rubbish.
It's a great idea to get together after your beach cleanup event to thank your volunteers and to reflect on the events of the day. To find all these resources, go to the tangaroablue.org website and look under the Resources tab.